Stagflation is occurring before your very eyes. Right, very important conversation today because the way we measure inflation, deflation, etc. is an important discussion, and I think there's stuff that people need to know.
We saw this week a big flash in the pan by the mainstream media and by the Australian Bureau of Statistics talking about we have deflation. CPI statistic from the ABS was highly distortive. It told a very false story. The mainstream media, I think, misled the public, and we have a couple of other metrics that we are going to talk to the audience about, which also supports my thesis of, in the next 18 months, we're going to see rising prices, not falling prices. And that is obviously, given that we're going to see unemployment increase throughout 2020 to about 9.5% in December, we could say that we are going through stagflation right now and probably to the end of the year at least.
Right. And it's worth saying, I think, John, here, we know that the CPI calculation as reported generally is understating for all sorts of reasons, right?
Yes.
And then there were some one-offs this time around, which has massively distorted the numbers.
So we have an article from the ABC. ABC talks about that we have deflation. So the headline CPI number was that for the June quarter, CPI fell 1.9%, which is the biggest quarterly fall in the history of the index.
That number is hardly reliable, and it certainly shouldn't have driven the number of headlines that it did, because, of course, all the headlines were talking about deflation, end of the world sort of stuff, right? And they really had got hold of the wrong end of the stick.
And obviously, some people have looked at these headlines and they've not taken a deeper look into, well, how did we get this largest fall in the CPI in the history of the index? So once you account for all of these things, we do not have deflation. We actually have inflation. Now, the latest, so the RBA measures the money supply using a whole bunch of various metrics. The most broadest measure of money is what they call broad money. So let's put the statistic up on the screen. Now, the June number was only released last Friday because it was the end of month. And what we can see is that, particularly in the last few months, we have seen a dramatic rise in the annualized growth of broad money. So for June of 2020, broad money is growing at 10.2% annualized. Even when people talked about V-shaped recovery or when we open up the economy, we're going to go back to normal. The reason why we can never go back to where we were at the beginning of 2020 is because we have a lot more government debt and we have a massive increase in terms of this monetary stimulus. And that is something we cannot reverse. We can't reverse unless if we have a huge deflationary depression.
Yes. Right, well, there's two observations there. The first is, why has money supply gone up? Obviously, JobKeeper, JobSeeker, people pulling money out of superannuation funds, all of that sort of stuff, right, is all part of the flow of money, right? But the key question is, where is it going to go, right? Because if it's going to chase goods and stuff in the shops, then prices definitely will rise. But it could also, like in the US, where the Fed has printed more than $5 trillion over the last couple of years, right? And 85 to 90% of that has gone directly into the financial markets. And it's gone directly into companies buying back their own shares by issuing corporate bonds, right? So all of that stuff's going on. Right? So that's the fundamental question. We need to watch now to see where that money flows to, right? Yes. Because if it flows in one direction, then your scenario is dead right, and we're going to get stagflation, all of that. If it goes back into the financial system and it gets sucked into areas that effectively doesn't spill over into everyday prices, you could actually have deflation. But whatever way it plays out, what we can say is there's going to be an ongoing income shock. Right?
Yes.
That's absolutely clear. High unemployment, right? More underemployment, more part-time jobs, more gig economy work, right? Yes. More firms going out of business.
Yes.
That's being reported at the moment, and I'm seeing it all in my data already. So the jobs numbers are going to look pretty sick for a long, long time. That means there's no possibility of income growth. right? I actually think income is going to go the other way.
Yes.
So even if you take the CPI numbers as honest, which they're not, right? People are going to get squeezed,
Absolutely.
right? If in fact CPI is actually understating the reality, as my data suggests, people are already being squeezed. That's why we've got mortgage stress now at 40%. Right?
Yes.
Because that's the cash flow, looking at everybody's income and expenditure, including mortgages, right? And what that tells me is that we have a whole pile of distress here, right? Which has got to work itself out. And if in fact we get the stagflation scenario, where effectively, prices run up as well, then it just creates an even worse situation. But this is a world of pain. Yes. And so this is a really important conversation, because I think people need to understand that this is not going to get fixed. We're not going to bounce back and suddenly everything will go back to normal, right?
That's right.
This is the new normal.
Yes.
And that's a scary thought.
So we'll have to see, but based on the data that I see, we are in stagflation. We are seeing it right before our eyes, and I think it's going to intensify as we go towards Christmas.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, John. Thanks for your time today. Very important episode. We will put a link to the earlier one where we actually specifically discuss money and how the value of money works.
Yes.
Because I think people probably should go back and revise that, because that really is the essence, isn't it?